Welcome back to part two of chapter eight, the evidence of evolution. What we're going to do in this part two is look at how evolution works. But before we do that, we need to redefine what evolution is. It is a slow change in species over time. It is something that happens to populations, not individuals. It happens so slowly that most of the time you will not see the results of it in your lifetime. Is not something that we believe in, it is something that we observe. So here's how it works. Um, Evolution goes through a process called natural selection. It appears to be random to get a variation, but this is because we want to have free will. I believe God decides that what the mutations are and recombines these genes as well as selects them. And so why not we call it God selection? If you have a hard time with natural selection in nature, oh, remember, God is in control of all of nature, so just call it God selection. So the first part of God selection or natural selection is the recombining of genes. There are three ways in which this can happen. One, the first way it ever happened in the history of life is mutations, changes in the genetic code. A lot of people like to say accidents in the code. I like to say God's will. Um, uh, these were the first. This was the first way that it was done. The next way that came about is sexual reproduction. This caused the Cambrian explosion. This is where two parents each provide half of the genetic material for the offspring as they mix together. This really sped up evolution. This made evolution go really fast because now you have a mixing up of the genes, creating a lot more variety. And this is what we need to really get evolution going. Then there can also be a gene flow that will also recombine genes. This gene flow happens between different populations when animals migrate from one population to another. Remember, though, God is still there. God is there behind the scenes, allowing and orchestrating those recombinations, slowly sculpting us like a potter, creating the diversity populations need so that they can evolve, so they can change, so they can form. So this causes those variations within populations. This gives the populations diversity or variety of differences in the population that can later be chosen or selected by the environment. Remember, God is fully connected to the environment, helping or causing the selection process. Now, the selective pressures. These are you take the variations within the populations, and then the selective pressures, like competition for food, nutrients, mates, territory, and just the fact of trying not to become food for themselves, will select traits that best fit the environment or the change in environment. If there's a change in the environment that's currently going on, this is going to happen. It's also called survival of the fittest. Those that live pass their traits on to new generations. Those that die don't, and their traits don't get passed on. And we can see this broken down in this diagram I like to use with my students. The natural selection part is on the left-hand side. You can see natural selection working way down to the triangle is a recombination of genes. Then you go down into the circle. That's where you have the variety or variation, the diversity of populations. Then you go off to the right, you have your selective pressures, which can cause eventually speciation, changes in organisms. Up in the middle, you can see the top in the middle is the what I talked about in part one is the evidence of evolution. And then after we get done with how evolution takes place, you've got the taxonomy over on the right hand side of how we classify organisms. Okay, so the classification system um, allows others around the world to have a common naming system to identify and categorize life. Carlos Linnaeus was the creator of this system that allowed us to put organisms into different categories to see how all life is related to each other. This man has been quoted inside a lot of biology textbooks as saying science originated to find the greater glory of God. That was a quote that you will find in your AP biology textbooks and your college biology textbooks. And that quote came from him, the creator of the classification system that we have here. So here's the structure of taxonomy, or the structure of the classification system. Since him, there was domain was another group that's been put in actually since I've been teaching. Then basically there's two domains. You have either the bacteria or eukaryotes. Right now there are currently 6 kingdoms, different types of life with simple qualifications. When I was in high school, there were only 2, plants and animals, and it was very cumbersome. We didn't know how to really organize it. It's a lot better organized now. Then you have a phylum, which is more specific qualities that sit inside the kingdom. Then you have a class or classes that is more specific qualities that sit inside each of the phylums. And the orders do the same thing, more specific qualities that sit inside the class. And the family is even more specific qualities that sit inside the order. What's really neat about families is that all the family names end in IDAE. So you can tell what a family name is because it ends in that suffix IDAE. Now, inside the family, you have genus, which is more specific qualities that sit inside the family. And then you have species, which is the most specific qualities that sit inside the genus. And what we do is we use that genus and the species in the scientific name. That scientific name is called binomial nomenclature. This means we use 2 names, binomial, 2 names, in Latin that name the species. We use the genus and the species to do this. The name must be underlined or in italics. The first letter of the genus is always capitalized. Everything else stays lowercase. Once the name is written the first time, and all other times after that, the name can be written by abbreviating the first capital letter of the genus and then writing the species after it. You don't have to keep on writing the genus all over again in the document. And I'll show this when we look at the human example here. So in classification of humans, the domain we belong to, and as humans, we're in Eukarya. We're in the kingdom Animalia. Yes, we are animals. We're in the phylum Chordata. We have vertebrae. We're in the class Mammalia because we are mammals. We're in the family Hominidae. We are upright walking apes without tails. We're in the genus Homo. Homo just means same. And species, same as us. And you can see down below is the how you would correctly write our species name or our scientific name, Homo sapiens. This is meant to be in italics. This video or the program here only allowed me to kind of write it in cursive here. You either write in italics or you underline it to make sure you see that that is a species specific name. And once you've written it once, again, even at the bottom, you can see the H sapiens. That H is representative of Homo because after you've written your scientific name once in a document, you don't have to write it the whole thing all over again. The genus here is Homo. You just write the H again. So that's the structure of taxonomy and classification. Seeing what evolution is, how it works. Hopefully you guys will come back and see, because of this evidence that we have here in evolution, and what we've seen in scripture, that we have common ancestors with other animals. You're going to see this has an important part to leading into sin, why we sin, a huge portion of that. And that is what we're going to look at in chapter 9 of God's Chemistry for Life. So I hope you come back and tune in again. Thank you. Bye.